Welcome back to Bay Sunday. I'm Elizabeth Cook. Since the election of President Obama, there has been talk of a post-racial society. Our next guest is a correspondent and host for 3 television shows. He's here today to discuss his most recent book, Who's Afraid of Post-Blackness? What it means to be black now. Please welcome Toure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. You know, post-racial and post-black are totally different. Post-racial is some naive sort of concept that I don't totally understand. It kind of means that we don't think about race anymore, or that racism doesn't exist anymore because we have a black president. And I don't think people who take race seriously take that concept seriously, right? We're not in a post-racial America. What I'm talking about is post-blackness, a more complex and deeper vision of what it means to be black. Black identity stretching out to infinity, that any way you want to be black is legitimate, is authentic. The word post-black comes from the art world, where they started to see artists who wanted to be rooted in but not constrained by blackness. I want to paint clearly coming from the black community, the black tradition, but I want to paint whatever I want and relating to influences from wherever I want. And I started to see that happening in the real world. People who said, hey, I come from blackness, but I love classical piano, I love opera, I love ballet, I love golf, tennis, what have you. You know, I want to go skydiving, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to do it because I'm black.
Sure. Now, you interviewed 105 people for this book, including Cornel West, Melissa Harris Perry, Chuck D, Kamala Harris. Why did you interview these people, and was there somebody that you wanted to interview and didn't?
Well, I wanted to create a large sort of Senate, sort of chorus, talking, having this massive, honest conversation about race. So I feel like the book functions as a sort of conversation, all of us sort of talking together, and I'm in the group sort of talking together with everybody about what it means to be black now. And I wanted a wide, varied group. So there's recording artists, visual artists, politicians, professors, all different sorts of people coming together to talk. There were a couple of people who I wanted to talk to, who I didn't get to talk to, but most of the people who I asked said yes, and I sat with them for an hour and, you know, face to face most of the time. A couple were on the phone, a couple were, you know, one was in writing, Mumia Abu-Jamal, who's in prison, so I had to write to him, but, you know, most of them were that really honest conversation face to face, you know, like when you go out to dinner with people and you get some wine and you have a really deep, honest conversation about race and identity. It was like that, and none of these conversations were, you know, fueled by wine, but I wanted to get to that level of honesty.
Wow. So what surprised you the most about these interviews?
Well, the honesty that people gave me when they talked about what is the most racist thing that ever happened to them. And Jesse Jackson I talked to, and he cried as he told me his story. And it was very painful to hear his story and some of the others. And these are not stories that are like secondary in people's lives. These are seminal moments in their lives that define who they become. And Jesse Jackson's moment, it happens when he's 19, and it leads him to become an activist. It's the first moment of activism in his career.
That's amazing. So what does it mean, do you think, after conducting all these interviews, what does it mean to be black now, 2011?
Well, what Skip Gates says in his class at Harvard is if there's 40 million black people, there's 40 million ways to be black. So it's not easily definable. And what it is really is defined by the person who is black themselves. So it's not something that outsiders can impose and you're not doing it right, you don't talk right, you don't walk right, you don't think right. You can be however you want to be, and that is legitimate and authentically black.
So who's afraid of post-blackness? I mean, is this sort of a new sort of generation of racism? Is that sort of what you're talking about here?
No, I think some people are a little afraid of the sort of freedom that I'm proposing. It sort of says, you know, like, you sort of lose control of the definition a little bit. Like, we had a sense of what it is. This is what it means to be. Kind of like a little like Malcolm X and Jim Brown and Richard Pryor. And I'm saying, like, you know, everybody be black however you want to be black. I don't want to throw Condoleezza Rice and Clarence Thomas out of the community because they're not doing it the way that we like. I disagree with them intellectually and the things that they propose and their policies, but I'm never going to insult them and say, you're not black.
So what was the election of President Obama? I mean, how did that sort of define this you know, post-blackness? Was that sort of a linchpin in this?
It was a massive moment for me because the day before Iowa, most black people were saying white America's not ready for a black president. So when we started to see victories in Iowa and all these other places, 13 primaries and caucuses in a row, we started to say, well, he actually can win the nomination, then, you know, actually can win the presidency. Started to say, well, something has changed in America, and I have to put up my thermometer and interview 105 people and talk to people and find out where are we now, because the game that I thought we were playing is clearly not the game that we're playing now. Something changed along the line, and I wanted to see what it was.
Toure, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You can purchase Who's Afraid of Post-Blackness at your local bookstore and online. We'll be right back with more Bay Sunday.
A legendary